unconfirmed that it's a bomb, but I can't see at this moment from a vehicle in the street how a power surge could affect it as you describe.
So it was an incident which clearly happened above ground?
It was definitely above ground. It was on the street that I'm on now, Upper Woburn Place, which is just near Russell Square.
And what have you seen in terms of injuries then, Bob? If there was an explosion on a bus, one presumes that bus was packed?
Yes, all buses are packed because of what's happening on the tubes. There are thousands of people in the streets trying to get to work, to walk distances and ways that they probably know little about, and the streets were packed. And there's a man now saying all the wounded have got to go to a hotel up the road, and there's a gentleman walking past me now who's got blood coming out of his eye, going up there now. I will go and try and find out more, but at the moment the whole area is blocked off by the police. So we have at one end of the street the police blocking off entrances to Euston Station, putting thousands of people onto the street, and within 300 yards we now have the entire street blocked off because of an explosion. So far we don't know why, but I'm suggesting it was a bomb.
And Bob, just talk about the police response there. How strong has that response been?
Well, it has been very quick and very rapid, but I have to say that they were already well on the streets, 100 of police, making sure that people were getting out of the tube, which is only 300 or 400 yards down the road, Euston Station. So they were out in force anyway, so they were there very, very quickly, along with an ambulance which I've just seen gone past now.
Bob, we'll leave you to try and get some more information there from the scene. For now, thank you.
You're watching Sky News with a major incident on the London Underground. It is coming up to 10 o'clock in the morning. We are staying with our pictures from our Sky helicopter. We heard at about 9:20 this morning that there apparently been some form of explosion at Liverpool Street. It's been reported from those in charge of the train authorities that there has been a power surge, but several explosions have been reported. We can cross live now to Liverpool Street and speak to our correspondent on the ground there, Lisa Holland. Lisa, give us an update.
Morning to you. It's pretty chaotic on the ground here at the moment. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people being evacuated from buildings in the surrounding area by Liverpool Street Station. A cordon's gone up around Liverpool Street, which, talking to one police officer on the ground here, he says that it stretches for about a quarter of a mile. Now, everybody within that cordon, in the shops, the offices close to Liverpool Street Station, are being urged to come out of their buildings, to go beyond this cordon. So the pathways, the streets are absolutely packed with people now. I have to tell you, this is an unofficial line. This is from one of the police officers that I've been talking to on the ground here. He says that he has been told that the incident that he is dealing with at Liverpool Station involves multiple casualties. The problem he says they have at the moment, which is why they've thrown the security cordon up, which is why they're evacuating everybody from the surrounding area, is that they really don't seem to know exactly what they're dealing with. Just talking to him, he says, look, we're trained to deal with every eventuality, be it nuclear, chemical, biological. He's not at all suggesting that it could be any of those things at the moment. He says he simply doesn't know. That's the problem. That's why they're having to evacuate everybody from this area at the moment. So people here are bewildered, unsure of what's going on, hearing reports of what's going on, but really nobody knows at the moment.
OK, Lisa, thank you very much for that. And as we've been listening to you, some more information coming in. The National Grid, which supplies power to the underground, has said there had been no problems with its system this morning, which could have contributed to the incident. We are clearly not even into an hour yet of this major incident which has shut down the whole of the London Underground. Clearly the emergency services engrossed in dealing with what they're finding on the ground. Some grim news indeed from Russell Square from one of our colleagues who was witnessing what had happened there. Apparently a large explosion which people there had assessed could have been a bomb. Our Sky News helicopter has been held back from Russell Square. We will keep you informed with any more details from Russell Square. Alongside me, my colleague Chris Roberts.
So, what's caused this? Well, the initial estimate was power surge incidents. That came to us from British Transport Police. Let's have a word with Richard Hope. He's a rail expert. Richard, power surge incidents, but the National Grid says it has no evidence of that. Any ideas?
I'm really completely baffled by this one. there are all kinds of protective devices to prevent higher voltages getting through to the third and fourth rails which supply the power to the train. They're supposed to operate at 660 volts. To cause this kind of damage that we're talking about here, I would assess that the voltage on the power being supplied to the rails, the voltage would have to go up to some thousands of volts, breaking down the insulation on the trains and causing arcing and fires and explosions of this kind. But I have never heard of any sort of multiple incident of this kind, and I can't at the moment figure out how it could happen, but clearly it has happened.
Any concerns over recent weeks, months, years that something like this was a possibility?
No. In the whole history of electric railways and underground systems, I can't recall an incident of this kind where we had explosions in such a widespread power surge. I mean, we're talking about each sort of short section of line, maybe half a mile in the central area. It's broken up into sections, and they're supplied by with power from substations down in the underground system. Now, if one of those went wrong and a couple of trains were affected, say in the area of Russell Square, between Russell Square and King's Cross, well, yes, I could imagine that, but how one could at the same time have such an incident as far away as Edgware Road, I just don't understand at the moment.
I mean, given, though, I know you say that safety measures are in place to ensure that something like this can't happen, given the amount of electricity that's surging through those lines, if something did go catastrophically wrong, as it appears to have, it could cause explosions.
Oh, yes, it can. I mean, there is a lot of power there, and quite a few of the major accidents on underground systems around the world have been caused in this way. There was one causing many dozens of casualties in Paris in 1903 in the early days, and a very bad fire. There was one in Baku in Azerbaijan. I don't know, we ever heard exactly how many were killed there. That was 200 or 300 people. But that was something that was on the train. That was a breakdown of the train, a major short circuit, major arcing, setting fire to the train. It was essentially, if I can put it that way, a local thing. To have such incidents occurring simultaneously across a large network like London Underground is, as I say, it's unprecedented. I don't have any hesitation in saying that.
I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying. Is your gut feeling that this is something far more sinister than an electricity power surge?
I wouldn't. It doesn't sound sinister to me. I mean, obviously one can't rule it out, but I don't know how. If I was a terrorist and sort of trying to do something, I don't know how I would even begin to set about doing this. Maybe somebody's come up with some plan, but I can't envisage it, and it's not usually the way they work. They plant bombs in suitcases and leave it on an underground train. That's dead easy. But how one would actually... I find it very hard to believe that this has anything to do with terrorism at the moment, but I could be proved wrong.
Richard Hope, rail expert, thanks for your time. Perhaps we can talk again a little bit later when the picture gets a bit clearer.
Just some news on the wires. Scotland Yard have said that they are assisting with what has been termed a major incident. They've confirmed, as we know already, of course, that there have been casualties. Officers were called out to Aldgate Station, which you can see at the moment, at 10 to 9 this morning to assist the police on the scene there. All of the emergency services are on the scene, and this has been declared a major incident, according to a spokesman. We can speak now to our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt, who joins us on the line. Martin, what do you have for us?
Well, as I think your other guests have been saying, the situation's very unclear, but certainly police have reacted to reports of 5 explosions at least at various tube stations around central London: King's Cross, Edgware Road, Aldgate, Russell Square and Liverpool Street. And I know that there have been some serious casualties. As you said already, it's a major incident. Anti-terrorist branch officers are clearly involved and on the scene at some at least of those reported explosions, but there isn't any confirmation at the moment that this is a terrorist incident. But Scotland Yard sources are talking about a very firm coordination of these explosions, which would suggest, certainly at the start, that there may be some terrorist involvement.
Martin, stay with us. Just a bit more detail on what has been going on at Russell Square. We were speaking to one of our colleagues who was actually on the scene, Bob Mills, and he had assessed that he'd seen a bus with its roof blown off. Now, we've now heard from Scotland Yard that they are not confirming reports of an explosion on a bus in Russell Square. The police are now at the scene and are attempting to determine what has happened there. But just to reiterate, we were speaking to our colleague. He was describing a scene of real chaos at Russell Square. We know that's one of the tube stations which has been cited by the transport authorities as having been badly hit in this major incident affecting the capital. Our correspondent on the scene had seen what he thought was the roof of a bus which had been blown off. That has yet to be confirmed by the police. Martin, you haven't heard anything on that basis at all yet, presumably?
No, I haven't, but you know, there certainly is a great fear at Scotland Yard that this is a series of coordinated terror attacks. It's a fear. There's nothing to confirm that at the moment, but I imagine that confirmation or otherwise won't be long to establish. And if it is a series of terror attacks, then I guess it's what the authorities have been warning about ever since 9/11. But I think we should make it clear at the moment that there's nothing confirmed that this is a series of terrorist attacks. I know London Transport, I think, have spoken about power surges. Now, I'm not an expert whether you could have a series of power surges like this with such devastating effect. I don't know. You'll need to talk to a transport expert. But certainly, Scotland Yard, City of London Police are treating this as a major incident, and they have officers going in all directions to at least 5 tube stations where there are reports of explosions.
Yes, as we're talking to you, Martin, stay with us. We're witnessing some fairly distressing scenes outside Aldgate Tube Station. People being brought out of there on stretchers by the emergency services as we're talking to you. Clearly, though, the police in London must have primed the network for utter concentration after 9/11. I mean, this is possibly one of the most vulnerable areas of London and the whole of the way the city operates in terms of those who would wish to do people living in the capital harm.
I'm sorry, I lost you there.
So I'm just asking you perhaps to talk us through about the priority the London Underground must be for the police in keeping vigilance against terrorist attacks.
Yes, I mean, it was always felt, certainly for the last 2 or 3 years, that the transport systems would be amongst the prime targets for any terrorist attack. And, of course, the vigilance that people are constantly warned about. I mean, there have been campaigns since 9/11, poster campaigns, radio broadcasts, constantly warning of the need to be careful and to look out for suspect packages. Anybody who travels on a train these days will be very familiar with the constant reminders, the broadcasts on platform tannoys that there is this need for vigilance. And, of course, officers, as far as they can, keep an eye on some of those stations that are deemed to be amongst the prime targets. And I think the list that we've got demonstrates that it's those that coincide with major rail terminals. Liverpool Street, we're talking about King's Cross certainly today. They would have been considered amongst targets for terrorists.
OK, Martin, for the moment, thank you very much for that.
If you're just joining us, a major incident on the London Underground this morning. Power surges, according to British Transport Police, causing explosions at Aldgate, Edgware Road, King's Cross, Old Street and Russell Square. We're just hearing that the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, is being updated on the chaos and the injuries that those explosions have caused. He, of course, is at the G8 summit in Gleneagles at the moment. Let's have a word with the transport expert, Christian Woolmar, who's in our central London studio. Christian, any idea what could have caused this?
No, well, at the moment, I've managed to have a couple of garbled telephone calls from people inside London Underground, and they seem to think that it is to do with a power surge, and the explanation might be that there's a power surge at one power station and then it goes down the line to the next substation, and there are apparently substations at Liverpool Street and Edgware Road, which might explain this. On the other hand, you know, there are resistors. They're not supposed to have these power surges. You know, although the electricity is supplied from outside nowadays, not from inside as it used to be, they shouldn't have these power surges.
Christian, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is the word from union officials I'm reading on the Press Association wires. Union officials said their sources had told them there had been at least one explosive device on the Underground. As I was saying, one explosion happened at Edgware Road. Suggestions of two explosions at King's Cross and Aldgate as well. Now, I must stress that we have no independent confirmation of that. That's just coming from the Press Association. Also confirmation from the Press Association that a bus has been ripped apart in an explosion in central London. You'll remember, you might have heard our producer Bob Mills talking about the scenes there, the roof of the bus ripped off. Let's go back to what you're an expert on. I know you're not a terrorism expert. Let's talk about the safety procedures that are in place on the Underground. How could the power systems have been overridden in this way?
Well, I mean, I think that might give a different gloss on it in that an explosion might send the power surge down the line, which would cause an explosion kind of at another place. That is a possible explanation. And I mean, my political instincts would say that this is a terrorist attack, given that it's just too much of a coincidence that it's Gleneagles today. And of course, the idea would be that people are being less vigilant because all attention is in Scotland.
Have you any idea how worried staff have been on the Underground about the fact that they have been seen in many independent eyes as obviously a potential terrorist target?
Well, there is a constant concern about that. Let's make this clear. The system is unprotectable. You can't kind of begin to search people's bags as they go onto the system. You can't search people. You can't stop kind of people attacking the London Underground if that's what they want to do, because you'd basically stop it kind of operating. And that is constantly in the minds of those running it.
The drivers themselves, I mean, there's nothing much they can do in situations like this. I mean, what kind of evacuation procedures are in place for an incident like this?
There are very good evacuation procedures. If you remember, there was a fire at King's Cross in 1987 which killed 31 people, and after that the evacuation procedures were completely revised. They were very poor at the time, but you know, some of the time evacuation involves going out by train. If people are stuck on a platform, the best way of getting them out is not necessarily to go up the stairs and out, but actually is to catch the next train. So it is quite a difficult situation if all the trains are stopped, because then you have to evacuate not only the people on the platforms but also people in the trains upwards, and that is quite a difficult job. But there is now always sufficient staff on the stations to ensure that this can be done, and they're very practiced at it. I mean, if one thing the IRA taught us, it taught us how to deal with terrorist incidents in the 70s and 80s.
Christian, just more explosion reports coming in. I'll repeat the one from Russell Square. We've got an eyewitness being quoted on the Press Association, Belinda Seabrook, saying that she saw an explosion rip through a bus as it approached Russell Square. Half the double-decker bus was in the air. She's quoted as saying, as I was also saying to you a couple of minutes ago, union officials on the Underground reporting at least one explosive device. Sticking with your field of expertise, how could one explosion trigger explosions elsewhere on the line?
Well, it might be that it created a power surge that then kind of went down the line to the next substation. That's something that somebody in London Underground, who worked for London Underground, told me that is a possibility. But I'm only saying that as a possibility. There are resistors which kind of are supposed to prevent those sort of power surges. But conceivably, if you happen to put one of these device in the right place, it kind of went down the line. It must be said, though, that it's quite strange that they would attack the power system rather than attacking people themselves. That is a kind of a different strategy from what we've obviously seen in Madrid, where they just put devices on trains. So, this is obviously quite sophisticated, and getting on the track to play such a device is not easy. So again, one mustn't jump to conclusions here. I mean, you can't get on the track very easily without being noticed, and certainly that would send an alert straight away. If anybody is in one of those tunnels, they would certainly trigger off an alert.
I mean, that's the most alarming thing, isn't it? That if this is, I must stress, we don't know for certain at the moment, if this is a major terrorist attack, somebody's clearly done their homework.
Yes, but I mean, we do know that these are very sophisticated people. We saw that in Madrid, where they coordinated 4 or 5 bombs kind of all in one go. So certainly, it is quite possible to do that. But I would be surprised that they would go for somewhere that would be as difficult to get to as these substations kind of in the centre of the system, because you can't just wander on the platform there. Off the platform and onto the tracks, people would notice you.
Christian Woolmer, transport expert, thanks for your time so far. Please don't go too far, because when we have a clearer picture, it might be good to talk to you again.
Let's take you now to an eyewitness to what is happening at Russell Square. Several news agencies, including ourselves, as we had our producer on the scene, reporting an explosion on a double-decker bus at Tavistock Square, which is just by Russell Square Tube. Susie Woodward joins us on the line from there now. She lives in that area. Susie, thanks very much for joining us on Sky News. What can you see?
Well, I've had to shut the window because you can probably hear all the sirens. It's just gridlock. I live on the square overlooking the actual grassy area, and nobody's moving anywhere. There's buses trapped, and all the emergency service vehicles just can't move.
And in terms of the explosion itself, did you hear anything?
I did, and this is a weird thing. My daughter's 18 months, and she was sitting next to me on the little chair in the dining area, which overlooks the square, and there was this enormous bang. And I'm so used to living in central London that she just looked at me and we both went, "Oh, what was that?" And then it honestly, it took phone calls from all my relatives around the world to ring me and say, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? There's been explosions on the tube."
So this is news which is going right round the globe pretty swiftly, it would seem. What did you do next?
Well, actually, I'm just getting all ready together to go downstairs and go outside the tube, and maybe we can talk later and I can tell you from outside I'm 2 minutes away from the tube station, and I'll be able to check out what's going on there.
And in terms, just paint a picture for people who live outside London, don't know anything at all about Russell Square, how large it is, how busy it is at this time of day, what sort of disruption this would cause.
Well, I mean, this is such a central route. It's just in Bloomsbury, right near. It's inside the congestion zone. It's a major thoroughfare. It's a big roundabout that all the cars use to get to East London, to West London. It's always very free flowing, but it's busy every second of the day. And I mean, people are abandoning their cars. They don't know what's going on. They're trying to pull over to try and there's a police van that since we went on air has moved 2 feet. And now people just cannot get out of the way to let this police van through.
And no evidence, though, on the square itself of those who've been wounded. Presumably the emergency services have dealt with this pretty swiftly now.
Well, I can't see the tube station, but I don't know what's happening. I can't see ambulances. All I can see is police vans just trapped. And I don't know, people are not moving up. This police van is stuck in the middle of right underneath my window. He can't move. And yet there is room for people to pull over, and people just seem to be dumbstruck.
OK, Susan Woodward, thank you very much. Perhaps we'll get an opportunity to speak to you later. As we're just hearing from Susan there, we're just getting news from the PA News Agency saying that police have received reports of multiple explosions in London, according to Scotland Yard, of course confirming what we've been witnessing in the last hour or so. But they've now confirmed they received reports of multiple explosions in London. That is according to Scotland Yard within the last few moments.
Obviously, we're going to stay with this story. Let's talk to Brian Cook. He's the chairman of the London Transport Users Group. Brian, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
This is rapidly turning into the stuff of every passenger's nightmare.
Yes, it is. And it does appear that there's now been an explosion on a bus in Russell Square, as you've just been reporting. And it is a great tragedy for London on following what was a very happy day for London.
Has this been of concern? I mean, from a personal perspective, my wife doesn't want to travel on the tube anymore. Have passengers been worried about the potential of a terrorist attack?
I think London passengers are actually quite resilient after all the difficulties they had some years ago with the IRA. But clearly it's always been in the back of their minds, and particularly after the terrible incidences nearly 2 years ago in Madrid. And people do worry about this. Having said that, it's too early to entirely speculate. The Metronet were saying initially that there was a power surge on the underground, but of course one doesn't know what caused that power surge, as Christian Woolmer, I think, was saying to you a little earlier.
As Scotland Yard has been reporting multiple explosions, they're saying at the moment, which of course could be related to some kind of power surge, but clearly the suggestion is this is a major terrorist attack. Scotland Yard confirming an explosion now on a bus at Tavistock Place near Russell Square. That's apart from all the incidents on the underground. Is it a sad reality that public transport is almost impossible to defend against terrorists?
One can't 100% defend anything against terrorists, I don't believe, and public transport is particularly hard. But the transport companies, the police and the other services have made it as hard as possible, and they have, I know, managed to thwart a number of potential attacks in London over recent years. But, we can't say today as to what has caused this, but it's just a terrible day to London. What I would urge is that any of your viewers that have any intention of coming to London today to abandon it. It is quite clear that London is not a place to be today.
It's obviously turning into a human tragedy, and also the repercussions of this. You're talking about people staying away today, but people are going to be worried for some time to come now.
Clearly they are. But I think we should allow the police and the emergency services to find out exactly what has happened and to worry about it after we've heard the full reports, rather than worry about it on the basis of speculation.
No, I appreciate that. Just going back to what I was saying about defending the line, though, let me just read another snap coming to us from the Press Association. Union sources now saying they've received reports of explosions on 3 different buses in central London. Scotland Yard confirming that explosion near Russell Square on a bus. Union sources telling us they have reports of 3 explosions on separate buses across central London. The situation obviously escalating as we speak, sadly. Just going back to sort of the security measures that could be put in place. I mean, it is physically impossible to have metal detectors at tube stations, people getting on buses being frisked. It is simply impossible.
It is. There is no way that you could have 100% security in a place like London and allow people to get around. As I say, measures have been taken, some of them obvious, some of them covert. There's increasing amounts of closed-circuit television systems. It's almost impossible to get into the underground at night and things like that. But clearly these things can happen, and as you say, it would be totally impossible to make it 100% safe, unfortunately.
Was there a fall-off in passenger numbers and an increase in passenger worries in the wake of September the 11th?
Not particularly. There was a little bit of a fall-off initially on the tube, and there's been some movement from tube to buses, and in bus patronage over the last few years is significantly up. But that, we believe, is largely because of the increased efficiency and the increased number of buses rather than any fear of terrorism.
I appreciate, obviously, Brian, that you represent transport users. What about transport staff? I mean, have you had much contact with them and their worries?
Not particularly, we have obviously spoken to staff, and we're talking all the time to staff more at a senior level than a junior level in transport companies. And they actually say the morale amongst staff before today, obviously, there was no difficulties in that area, and it has not been of a major concern to transport companies.
What about emergency procedures for an incident like this? Are you sort of au fait with what kind of operation kicks in when something like this happens?
Yes, we are, and all the police forces in London, and there are three that are involved, the City Police, the Metropolitan Police and the British Transport Police, have very robust emergency plans that they discuss with us from time to time.
I mean, I understand that the Tube network is obliged every year to hold an emergency exercise, and it actually just happened last month.
Yes, it did. It had an emergency exercise at Bank last month, and about 9 months ago it had a similar exercise at Lambeth North. And they do undertake regular emergency evacuations in addition to those, and practice with the emergency services, including the fire brigade and the ambulance service.
Brian, we're just looking at the latest pictures to come into us from Aldgate, which has been the focus of today's terrible events, although obviously the police now confirming that there have been incidents in a number of separate locations. You were talking about the emergency procedure that kicks in when something like this happens, and we can see dozens of police officers, dozens of ambulances, fire crews, and obviously they'll be there for some time, and at the various other incidents that are continuing across London. Brian Cook from the London Transport Users Group, thanks for your time today, and
Thank you very
perhaps
much.
we'll talk again later.
Joining us on the line now is Susan Faraday, who's joining us from the Russell Square area. Susan, thank you for your time. I believe you witnessed the bus explosion there. Tell us what you saw.
Basically, we was walking from King's Cross up past Euston, and I just heard a bang. I looked around, the whole top of the bus and the back of it just came off. There was debris everywhere, people just running. A lady that I was with, that I was asking directions from, someone fell on her. She nearly got trampled on. We managed to get up and go into a building, and we got rushed out of the building, and I don't know where I am now, but I'm somewhere in London, and we're just hearing that bombs have gone off at Russell Square, Aldgate, King's Cross, Liverpool, and this bus. So they stopped all traffic, all public service is just at a halt. So we're just trying to stand away from it all, basically.
And how quickly did the emergency services respond to that? Were you basically moved out of the way?
I got off the train at 9:30, and there was a scare there, and there was police and fire brigades everywhere. They've been they're tight, they're helping us, etc. They've been so good, because everyone's distraught. They don't know what's going on, basically. They said initially that it was a power surge, but it can't be a power surge if buses are blowing up, and stations, about 5 stations have had bomb scares, and bombs have been going off.
Indeed.
I mean, people have got blood. There's a lady who's got cracked ribs, and another lady whose half face is hanging off.
And are they being assisted as you speak?
There's emergency services, ambulances, everything. There's people with them all now. In the buildings, but they're still in the buildings. We were told to get out, because obviously they can't move because they're very badly injured.
So people are being treated at the scene as you're talking to us now, Susan?
Yes.
And in terms of just how busy it was, I mean, everybody knows who has any dealings with London, it must have been packed at this time.
Yes, it was. It really was. I mean, I was just speaking to my mother on the phone, and I said, it's just, I don't know, power surge. I couldn't get anywhere because all the stations are closed, and she said, try and get home, get on a bus at Euston. I'm so glad that I didn't, because I could have been blown up with a load of other people. I feel so sorry for them. I don't know what to do.
And Susan, my producer was just telling me that you're pretty young yourself, 16, I believe.
I'm doing work experience in Soho,
Well, you're doing a fantastic job talking to us, Susan. Just describe to me, if you can, what you can see happening now from where you are.
At the moment, there's just people just standing aimlessly in the street. They've just basically blocked off all the roads that were where the accident happened down, just basically right down the corner. And it's just all barred off, and there's police. We're actually outside the police headquarters, so I think this is the best place to be at the moment.
So it seems from what you're seeing that the police plans to deal with this sort of incident have kicked in pretty quickly.
Yes, it has. I see there's police cars going up and down the road right now, and I can see people in the yellow jackets. So I'll pass you back to Andrew.
Andrew, I don't know who Andrew is alongside
Hello.
you, but caught up in this dreadful incident alongside Susan. Clearly, Andrew, good morning to you from Sky News. Just tell us what you've seen and what you know about what's happened so far.
This is Sky correspondent Andrew Moore. I just wanted to pass you over to another eyewitness, Angie, who saw the bus explosion, so she will just tell us what she saw.
OK, Andrew, it is an Andrew that we know. Thank you for that. Sorry, I didn't catch the lady's name. Angie, I think it was. Hi, Angie. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for giving us some of your time on this dreadful morning. What did you see happen?
Well, not an awful lot, to be honest. I was walking along, giving directions to the lady you just spoke to, actually, and there was a whole crowd of people around the bus, because it was the only bus about, everyone's trying to get on it. Next thing I know, I'm on the floor, and there's a shed load of glass and stuff raining down. Someone fell on me, so I presume someone else fell on him, because for a moment I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be trampled. And I picked myself up, and there was like glass and stuff. Everyone was running. And I just ran into the nearest building. Thankfully, the security guard was going to everybody, get in. And he escorted us down into sort of like a basement area where we kind of like sat and waited for about 10 minutes. And then he came along and said, everybody get out, which was a bit scary. So we came back up and got back out on the street level. And now we're in, I think I'm stood in Tavistock Place I'm stood in. And I've been stood here for about the last 40 minutes. Wondering what happens next, really.
Is there any doubt in your mind that the explosion that you heard was probably a bomb?
Well, I saw the bus, and the bus is ripped out at the back. I mean, I didn't see the roof fly off like what Suzanne said, but I saw the bus, and it's ripped out at the back. And it couldn't have been anything else, really, not unless the bus flew up of its own accord on a day when there's loads of other incidents going on at the stations.
No, indeed. And in terms of those who are injured on that, I mean, did you have any sense, presumably this bus must have been as busy as it normally would be on any day of the week in central London?
Well, to be honest with you, there were loads more people around than normal, because I'd been at Warren Street and they were turning people away. And by that stage, like everything was cordoned off. And where I was, there was a huge amount of people, more so than ever, because there was nowhere to go, because the tube network was shut down to us. And the traffic was going nowhere, so it was a huge amount of people in the area I was in, yeah.
So this happened after the news had already came through about the incidents on the rail network, then, effectively?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first I knew of it was about 10 minutes before my boyfriend had phoned me, knowing that I used Liverpool Street Station, and wanted to know if I was OK, but I was up here because I was doing something else. And he said to me there's been an explosion at Liverpool Street, and that's all I knew, that there'd been an explosion at Liverpool Street, and I figured they were shutting down the tube networks because they were, like, playing it safe. So that's all I thought had happened. Next thing, the bus blows up, and now suddenly we're stood around here and people are coming back saying that they think that they're hitting all the mainline stations, and apparently there's been an explosion at Russell Square as well. I don't know how true all of that is. I'm stood in the middle of the street.
No, you're clearly still in the centre of it. Angie, thank you very much indeed for talking to us this morning, and we just hope that you get home safely at some point. I suspect you may have a bit of waiting to do yet. Angie and Susan, and indeed our correspondent Andrew, thank you very much indeed for the moment.
Just to update you very briefly, reports of explosions at a number of locations across central London this morning, including Aldgate Station, Edgware Road and Tavistock Square, as well as another incident we're hearing at King's Cross. At least one, possibly three bombs on buses, according to unions. Those unions also reporting explosive devices on the tube network as well. Let's talk to our correspondent Lisa Holland, who's at one of those locations heading towards Russell Square. Just describe the scene around you, Lisa.
It has to be said, Chris, it is fairly chaotic here. To the eye, it would seem that this part of London appears now to be absolutely devoid of buses. The ones that I have seen have appeared to have been emptied or not in service signs put up. Aside from that, I've seen hardly no buses at all, which seems to suggest that they have been put out of service because of the uncertainty. People are just milling around the streets, clearly because of the absolute chaos now surrounding the public transport. People are just trying to walk wherever they can or get a taxi, which is of course virtually impossible. Word is starting to get around amongst people. I've seen people crowding around televisions as people now trying to actually work out exactly what's gone on today.
Lisa, the latest I'm hearing from Scotland Yard is that they are now confirming at least 3 explosions on buses in central areas of London, that coming from the Associated Press newswire. It has to be said, sadly, that the G8 gathering had prompted fears of some kind of terrorist spectacular. Obviously, the focus of attention was up there at Gleneagles, but as far as a target goes for terrorists, the tube network and the bus system, of course, very, very simple to target. Excuse me 1 second. London blasts caused some fatalities. That's coming from a transport company source. Lisa, just going back to what I was saying, fears of a terrorist spectacular linked to G8.
Absolutely. I think that clearly, obviously, the capital and other parts of the UK have been on the highest state of alert for some time now, but people who know the capital, anybody who takes any kind of public transport knows exactly how vulnerable any sort of public transport network is, as was very clearly illustrated in the Madrid bombings a year or so ago. So certainly is something which people here, of course, live with. And clearly, as I can see, in any direction that I look around now, this is a place, this is a city which is utterly paralysed at the moment, regardless of actually what the consequences are. Fear and having to put security cordons around the stations, having to close down other stations as precautions, means that now this is a place of absolute chaos, which is really only penetrated by the sound, I have to say, of the sirens of the emergency services who are whizzing through town trying to get to each of these locations as quickly as I can. I can see now police van after police van just pouring through the streets as I'm on my way to Russell Square. We've just been overtaken by a couple of ambulances, clearly because of the geography of the list which you've just outlined of the number of places now where there appears to have been some kind of incident this morning.
Lisa, thanks for now. By the way, we're hearing that all London hospitals are now on major incident alert after today's explosions.
We're also hearing, Chris, that British ministers, of course, those who are not in Gleneagles are meeting to clarify the situation, and there is a statement from the government pending. So we'll keep an eye on that for you and bring you more detail as soon as we get it. You're watching Sky News. On the left of your screen, you can see the images of Aldgate Station from our Sky News helicopter. On the right-hand side of the screen is the latest video pictures from the ground itself. An extraordinary emergency operation underway to try to get people out of Aldgate Station following the explosion there this morning. There are several other explosions: Old Street, Edgware Road, King's Cross, Russell Square, that affecting the tube network, which is all closed down now. We know this is affecting main Rail London lines. Those travelling from other parts of the country will have their journeys seriously affected. Mainline trains into London have been stopped short of the capital. We know also that there have been reports, one confirmed, of an explosion on a bus near Russell Square, Tavistock Square. Unions are also reporting that there have been at least 2 other buses on London, 2 other explosions on London buses. We're just getting more news from the Reuters agency. The source at Metronet, the transport company in London, is confirming 3 explosions. Let's speak now to Professor Eric Moonman. He's an expert in terrorism. Professor Moonman, thanks very much indeed for joining us. When we first heard news of this morning, it seemed that there may be something relatively straightforward about this incident. It may have been something to do with the power on the underground network. It seems increasingly that that may not be the case now.
No, I think that this is a very clear and deliberate attempt by terrorists. It doesn't matter who they are or what their motives are. It's causing enormous damage and possible fatalities in London. If they wanted to paralyse a major city while a World Conference is going on the day after enormous joy, they've succeeded. Nevertheless, I think that the emergency services are, as I see it, working extremely well. I'm at the airport, and obviously this is, in any set of circumstances, this would be a prime target. And they're on high alert here too. But the important thing is that it's where the normal public goes in its day-to-day that is always an attraction for the terrorist mind. And it's a twisted mind, and that's why we're finding that the heart of London is almost closing down. The one thing I would say, and I think it's a colleague here in security also says, is that those who don't have to go to London today, please stay out. There's no reason whatsoever to add to what will be an enormous build-up of traffic and people on the road.
Well, I'm sure that's a message that will be heeded pretty rapidly from anybody watching the scenes that we've been seeing this morning. Professor, perhaps you could give us your observations on the coordination, the seeming coordination of these attacks. Clearly, the first news that we heard this morning was what had been affected on the London Underground, rapidly followed by what seems to have been one confirmed, two other reported explosions on buses. If this has been coordinated, it's been done pretty easily and with some skill, it seems.
Yeah. I think the public bus has always been attractive to terrorists. We know this, and the transport generally. It's because it's vulnerable. I mean, you really can't. I mean, I plead with the authorities, but I know that it would be impossible to have a 100% system. You can only have a system about 60% effective, and the rest is deterrent. You can always sort of outfox with a certain amount of goodwill and luck what the terrorists are likely to do. But the bus is a public vehicle, and this is what was found in Madrid. It's what the Israelis have to live with, because they know that it produces the most terrible and terrifying pictures, and it makes a story. We haven't been up to the mark on this, and one has to say this, but nevertheless, this isn't the moment to in any way to apportion blame. There's a massive job to be done. Confidence has to be restored, and then we will start to think about where they're coming from. The unfortunate thing is, because of what is going on in Scotland, that some of the twisted minds of the terrorists will all want to claim credit for this action. I mean, this is something that your viewers and you and I can't possibly understand, but there will be a lot of people who want to say, we did it. The fact is that you can do any crime if you really want to, and it doesn't matter. But it's a bloody sight. And it's one that I think will probably continue. That's why the authorities are determined to keep people out of London, because I don't think we've seen the end of it today. I mean, it's still early morning, and the coordination they've used is to wreck the day, but it's quite conceivable that they haven't finished yet.
OK, Professor Eric Moonman, we'll speak to you again, no doubt, in the coming hours. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Still pictures as well as video now coming in of today's clearly terrible events, just to give you a sum up of what's been happening. As far as we know at the moment, confirmed reports of explosions at a number of locations, both on the London Underground, and buses have been targeted. Initially, we were hearing that power surges were to blame. It now looks like a terrorist attack. Now, a common statement is due to be made later today on these explosions, and we can in fact talk to the Shadow Transport Minister, Alan Duncan, who joins us now. Mr. Duncan, a terrible day by the looks of it.
Yes, I'm afraid so. I'm afraid this is a day on which the fears probably everyone has at the back of their mind about travelling in a capital city are turning into reality.
Mr. Duncan, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you. Can you just stay there for a moment while we go to another eyewitness report? Yes. Susan Woodward, I understand, is on the line.
Hi, Susan. We were speaking to you a little earlier. It's Julie Etchingham here at Sky News. You've moved out of your flat, I believe, and we can hear the emergency services. Just tell us what's happening.
I've just been a fire engine nearly run somebody over in his hurry to get. There's been another bang up at Tavistock Square. It was about a minute ago. Now I'm being moved on. We're being moved further back. I can see the bus. It was a much softer bang than the last one that we heard, but it was definitely a bang. And now, can you hear the policemen screaming?
I can hear them. We just want to make sure that you're safe, Susan. Presumably you're being moved on now, are you?
Yeah, I'm being moved on, but it's really, really chaos now. I've seen dogs roaming around. I saw policemen running around
escorting a doctor. People screaming out, "Is anybody a doctor?" A guy identified himself. They're taking him down in the direction of Russell Square. So they want me away.
Susan, just confirm for us and reiterate, there had already been one explosion and there's now been another.
There has been another bang. It was a lot softer than the one I heard about, well, whenever the first bang was. This one was 2 minutes ago. It came from the direction of Tavistock Square, where the bus is off the road. Looks like that's been exploded. And that one was just a lot softer, but it has caused a whole new range of activity. People are, the policemen are just really getting anxious now because they want us away.
And presumably you're being moved back towards your home now, are you?
Well, away from my home. I'm hemmed. I don't think I'm going to be able to get back, actually, because they're cordoning off more and more. Where I'm situated, people don't know London. Russell Square is at the south end of my house, and then Tavistock Square is at the north end. So between the two, I'm sort of hemmed into the middle of the two incidents. They've really targeted central London.
It's probably very difficult for you to assess, but just for our viewers, I mean, how many police can you see around you? How many vans and how many emergency vehicles?
Well, I mean, all credit to them. Last time I spoke to you, nobody was moving. It was gridlocked. They have opened up what's called Southampton Road. They've got some traffic moving, but I can see there's 10 policemen all in a bit of a line moving us away. All the journalists, the cameras, they're all moving away now. Also, the journalists have all been ringing, and most of the mobile networks are down, which is obviously all the people, the relatives trying to ring each other and assure them they're okay, but also all the journalists trying to ring into their people. I'm very lucky that my network has been able to operate. So, but just people are shocked. They've come out of the hotels. It's a big tourist area. This is what I don't understand. Is that Russell Square? It's such a massive every day when I go down to the station, there are hundreds of tourists, waiting outside to get their tickets. This guy's just being idiot. It's just a massive tourist area. So all the people have flooded out of the hotel. It is a really busy area of London.
OK, Susan, just stay with us if you can. We're just getting some more reports on the newswires here. We're seeing now that the AP news agency is quoting that police sources have said that a bomb is indeed suspected in the bus explosion. Presumably, Susan, that is the very explosion that you heard, the first one that you heard this morning.
Yeah.
We're also hearing that there have been serious casualties in the London explosions, but have not yet confirmed any deaths.
Well, look, what I'm seeing, the ambulance are still rushing to the scene. We're not talking about, this is all over now. There's 3 emergency ambulances, that was them, that going their way towards Tavistock Square. They've got this big Southampton Road open for them to go there. But what they can't do is get out. They're getting to the scene. But I've seen ambulances stuck in the traffic. That was the 4th ambulance. That was called the Harley Street ambulance. That was the 4th one I saw rushing towards Tavistock Square.
There have been a number of dreadful incidents across London today.
Downing Street.
The Cabinet has been kept informed of the situation, as has the Prime Minister at Gleneagles. I chaired a meeting of our COBRA Senior Ministers Committee earlier on today to assess the situation and decide what immediate action needs to be taken. As far as the police are concerned, they are in operational command and dealing with the situation in accordance with very well-established procedures in an extremely professional way. Health services are in support to deal with the terrible injuries that there have been, and I want to express sympathy on behalf of the whole government to the families and friends of those who have been injured. And as far as transport's concerned, underground services have been suspended, and we advise people not to make unnecessary journeys in London at this stage in order to help the police and other emergency services deal with the current situation. I'll be making a statement to the House later on today to fully update the situation, and throughout all of this and the terrible situation that is there, we will be updating the public very directly at regular intervals with the most up-to-date information we have. Thank you very much. That's all I've got for now. Thank you.
It's the Home Secretary Charles Clarke talking just a couple of minutes ago about today's terrible events across central London. It does now appear to be a major terrorist attack. Mr. Clarke saying that the blasts have caused terrible injuries, he said. Now, the police at the moment confirming serious casualties, but at the moment they say they can't confirm any deaths. We have other eyewitness reports, however, particularly from the underground, talking about numerous fatalities. Let's go back to the Shadow Transport Secretary, Alan Duncan, we were talking to a couple of minutes ago. My apologies to interrupt you, sir, but your reaction to today's events?
Well, I think I echo what the Home Secretary's just said. I think it doesn't matter what your political persuasion is today, we all join as one country in deploring what's happening. I think we can see an unfolding pattern here, which is clearly a coordinated terrorist attack. It's not for us at this stage to guess who is behind it or what their motives are. What matters immediately is to help those in need and to let the emergency services do the excellent job they're clearly doing. And I think that, let's say to anyone, if they do ask you to move on, if a uniformed officer says, please clear the area, don't be angry, just do what they say and help them help you. So Charles Clarke will be making a statement to the House of Commons this afternoon, and I'm afraid, are going to have to see how these events unfold in the course of this morning. The fears I think we all have at the back of our mind about travelling in our capital city have unfortunately turned into reality today, but we have to keep a calm head and a determined mind to make sure that these people do not get the better of us.
My apologies, I know you don't want to speculate on a cause, but obviously people are going to put 2 and 2 together and point to the G8.
Well, obviously it is happening at the same time. We can, of course, guess who may be behind this, whether it's anti-globalization people or other kind of terrorist groups, but none of us knows at the moment, so it is only speculation, and it's probably not wise for any of us to pretend that we know until we have more information before us.
Mr. Duncan, I don't know if you're kept informed within the terror threat loop, but have you any evidence that we were in a threat situation at the moment?
No, I have no such evidence.
But obviously people, even post-September the 11th, have been worried about exactly something like this.
Well, I think that's right, and I think that politicians of all parties will want to cooperate, and I hope have done so, to make sure that there are always contingency plans for unfortunate attacks, deplorable attacks of this sort. And I've no doubt that all of those plans that have been put in place are being invoked today in a very efficient way. They seem to be. It does look as though the emergency services have responded brilliantly and very quickly. But frankly, this is the ultimate nightmare coming into play, and we just have to make sure we overcome it.
Alan Duncan, Shadow Transport Secretary, thanks for your time this morning.
Let's take you live now to Aldgate Station. Our correspondent on the scene there, Greg Milam, for us this morning. Greg, what can you tell us?
A lot of activity, not surprisingly, Julie, but we're seeing buses
we seem to have lost our connection. We're
just
do continue, Greg. Sorry, we lost you for a moment.
Yeah, we're only half a mile from the Royal London Hospital here, which is, of course, the major trauma centre for this area, and we're seeing those buses used to carry people back to the hospital. A lot of worried relatives outside of that hospital waiting for news. We saw crowds outside as they strained to hear what was going on and find out about people they knew who were on trains leaving from Aldgate. As you can see, the area completely sealed off by the police, and those buses you can probably see in the distance there will be ferrying casualties. Aldgate Station is just to the right of that bus there, and that's where you'll be seeing people coming out and being carried straight up past our position here, half a mile or so to the hospital. Huge amounts of confusion, as you can imagine, from people trying to get into London, going in this direction, trying to get out, and just trying to get information about people who may be inside and how on earth they're going to get around at all. But the area is sealed off, and at this stage, some confusion here at least about what exactly is going on.
Yes, we understand, of course, from London Ambulance Service that they now have their major incident operation underway. We're just having a looking at We're just hearing that at least 90 casualties have been suffered at Aldgate Underground Station, according to a doctor there. A doctor reported on the wires at least 90 casualties at Aldgate Underground Station. This, of course, reflected in the comments by the Home Secretary Charles Clarke a few moments ago that these blasts across London this morning have caused and indeed are causing terrible casualties. We're also waiting to hear a statement from the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, at Gleneagles. That is due in the next few minutes. He's being kept informed, of course, of all the terrible events as they unfold in the capital this morning. If you're watching Sky News, you're watching images live from our helicopter above the capital. We can speak now to our colleague, one of our producers at Sky News, Bob Mills, who gave us an eyewitness account of what had happened at Russell Square. He's joining us again. Morning to you, Bob. What more can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you, basically, reiterate what some of the things that I said about an hour ago. A bus in Russell Square, clearly the top of the bus had been blown off, and looking at the wreckage, it looks as if the bomb, whatever description it was was in the top deck at the back because the wreckage is splayed out from that area, and terrible to see. I did see a lot of bodies being treated on the ground around because it would have affected hundreds of passers-by who were all streaming out of Euston Station. People were using tables that they got from a nearby hotel to use as stretchers. There were a lot of people helping. The police were very, very quick to seal off the area, but that's because they were there anyway, because they were there 300 yards down the road at Euston Station where they were evacuating that, so thousands were streaming out from that. And I have to say, on a personal level, that if fear and chaos are weapons, then they are very deadly weapons. Not only the physical injuries that have been caused around the capital today, but there are hundreds and thousands of people wandering around London at the moment, many crowding around hotels and restaurants and bars where there's a television screen, because that's probably the best way that they can actually find out what's going on and why they're being shunted around the city. They are walking everywhere. I mean, you are literally walking along looking at every bus, every area where there are a large number of people, and you think this could be a target. I mean, it is the most frightening experience I've had for many a time. You just look at public transport and you think, I'm going nowhere near it.
Okay,
so I'm
Bob.
going to walk, and you just hope for the best.
Bob, just stay with us for a moment. An update from the Newswire. We're hearing that London Mayor Ken Livingstone is rushing home from Singapore following the news that is unfolding this morning. He's returning to London very rapidly. Reuters have already heard from him, coming back, of course, from that day which we're quickly forgetting, where we won the Olympics for London. We're also hearing that the German rail network is adapting its security measures as they watch events unfold here in London this morning. Bob, I don't know whether you're still with us. We're just waiting for a statement from the Prime Minister. But it seems as though there may have been a second explosion near Russell Square, which was reported a little earlier on. Did you hear anything of that?
No, but in the level of things, I mean, the police were telling us to either go away from this area completely or to stay in hotels and restaurants that we were already in. They were telling all the hotel staff to check every room and to go through everywhere in the hotel to check for security. And I decided, along with others, that we didn't want to be locked in that hotel for the rest of the day. We're near Russell Square, so we headed for a police cordon and onto the street. As when these things happen, you think, oh well, that's the incident for this area. We'll be safe and we'll be fine. I'm just so grateful that I got away from that area when I could.
Okay, Bob. Thank you very much indeed for that. No doubt we'll catch up with you again later on.
Let me just update you with what's going on if you're just tuning into Sky News. There's been a major incident. It appears to be terrorist related in central London today. Explosions at a number of locations, both on the underground and buses as well. Those appear to have been the targets. Eyewitness reports pouring into Sky News here. Let me just read you the words of a man called Marin Stefanski, who at the moment is being treated at a hotel near Edgware Road, one of today's targets. He said, I just experienced a huge explosion on the underground, the glass hitting me in my back. People started screaming around me. There was glass everywhere. We couldn't breathe. There was no way to get off the train. I was in the front of the first carriage. There was a huge, massive hole in the carriage. As I went past the second carriage, I could see bodies lying all over the floor. So clearly reports of a major incident at numerous locations across London today.
Just to interject, Chris, Scotland Yard has been quoted saying that the force will be setting up a casualty bureau within the next half hour with a telephone number for people to call if they're worried about their loved ones. As soon as we have the incident number for you, of course, there must be many people concerned. Given that the phone networks are under enormous strain now. As soon as we get that number and as soon as they issue it, we will bring it straight to you. In the meantime, this is the latest video now from Russell Square. It is one of the most famous squares in London, really, a great centre piece of green, very busy roads surrounding it, a lot of tourist hotels off the roads around Russell Square. These are the latest images, of course. We're just bringing them to you as soon as they reach us. We were speaking to an eyewitness on the scene who heard the first explosion in her own flat and was in little doubt in her mind that she had indeed heard a bomb going off. As we can see there from the latest images, the emergency services all firmly on scene, enacting their major incident procedures.
You're watching the reaction of emergency services. Let me tell you the reaction of politicians. The Home Secretary Charles Clarke appeared a couple of minutes ago to confirm that the blasts had caused terrible injuries, was the term that he used, although we're hearing from a number of sources that it's way beyond injuries, a number of fatalities, some reports of dozens inside underground trains alone at the moment. We're expecting the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, to make a statement, an emergency statement from the Gleneagles conference where he's hosting the leaders of the G8 countries. We'll obviously bring you that as soon as we get it. In the studio with us is terrorism expert Chris Bellamy. Chris, we all thought this was a power surge, was the first word. It doesn't look like that.
Certainly not. It's too early to say. We don't yet now know how many have been killed, how many have been injured, but there are obvious parallels here with Madrid, I think. Are there not, with simultaneous attacks on at least 2 trains or 2 stations?
Chris, wait 1 second while we hear the words of some survivors of these incidents.
And then the driver helped us out and we walked to Russell Square.
Flying glass, what caused the injuries?
I don't know, they just felt like there was an explosion overhead. And there was a lot of people. I don't know, they could have been my glasses because I had them on when it happened. But yeah, so I have no idea. It was just black and we just got out, so we have no idea.
What did you hear after the explosion?
People just screaming. I thought it was on fire. Yeah. And you could just see light outside the carriage, but yeah, there was. It felt like orange light. It felt like it was on fire. And you could hear and it just stank of burning.
Can you come back into the hotel? Yeah.
Sure.
Those are survivors talking to Sky from Russell Square, one of the targets today in this terrible series of attacks. Terrorism expert Chris Bellamy with us in the studio. Chris, as you were saying, it does appear that this was a highly sophisticated, coordinated terrorist attack.
It looks like it. The preliminary reports we've heard about Liverpool Street, Edgware Road, well, that's bracketing the central area of London, and then Russell Square right in the heart of the university precinct in the middle. It has the coordination and the simultaneity which we associate with one group in particular, although obviously it's far too early to say at the moment.
As we saw in those terrible events in Madrid, a public transport network is a very easy target.
It is a very easy target, and of course what we may be talking about here is not suicide bombers, but just packages left on trains. It is the softest possible target, and if we think of all the huge amount of security that there is up at Gleneagles to look after the leaders of the G8 nations and what's been going on up there, while one's attention is distracted, although I don't think the London authorities' attention was distracted, obviously that is London would be an ideal target for a different group. And we've expected something like this for a long time, of course.
Chris, stay with us in the studio.
We're going to go straight back to Aldgate Station, Aldgate East Underground Tube Station, and speak to Greg Milam, who's there. We lost you a little while ago, Greg. Just bring us an update. It seems as though the emergency operation firmly in place now. Just give us a sense, if you can, of the timescale of what we've witnessed so far this morning at 11:05 now.
Well, I should say, first of all, Aldgate East, which is the station nearest to us, is being used as a point where they're receiving some of the less seriously wounded, those who may be witnesses, as one police officer put it to me a second ago, just people who they can talk to about what exactly went on, and they can build a picture of what happened in this part of the city this morning. There are buses and coaches way down the road towards Aldgate Station, which was, of course, the centre of what happened, the explosion underground there this morning. That's carrying people, as we can see, away to the Royal London Hospital, just a short distance up the Mile End Road from us here. What's happening there is a major trauma centre. We've already seen paramedics and teams of doctors, obviously those not on duty, arriving at great speed this morning. There are also a lot of people waiting outside, no doubt for information. The buses and coaches are being driven into the back of the hospital and unloading those casualties that need to be treated in that hospital there. The Royal London, also based, of course, for the air ambulance in London, the bright red helicopter that's very familiar in these parts, and that's been taking off and heading into the city to no doubt offer the help that it can. But all of these buses that are carrying casualties, not all of them seriously wounded, but all of the casualties from Aldgate and this area seem to have ambulance staff on board offering the help that they can, but the area itself remains sealed off. And further down into Aldgate, no doubt that the task of establishing what is left underground, what has happened to that tube train, what's happened to those who were on the train at the time, and whether they can be offered any help is continuing.
Greg, thank you very much indeed. We'll speak to you again. This is some video that we received from Russell Square a little earlier on, a few moments after the emergency services arrived on the scene there. And as has been reported from those eyewitnesses who've managed to speak to us this morning, just streams of people injured, and it seems some fairly grave injuries indeed. We know that the Home Secretary, Charles Clarke, speaking from Downing Street a few moments ago, had said that there have been terrible injuries sustained in these series of attacks now, it would seem, across the capital this morning. The whole of that area closed off to general traffic. We can just check to see whether we've got any further live pictures indeed coming in from Russell Square. I don't think at the moment that we have, but clearly walking wounded, people in shock. We know that people were moved off into other buildings, straight off the streets and into some of the surrounding offices and hotels in that area. We know that the Prime Minister was due to speak at 11 o'clock. That has now been put back to around midday, we believe. Of course, we've got our eyes at Glen Eagles and waiting for any word from there. But we can show you once again, actually, the still image from Russell Square, which we received from a viewer a little earlier. The red circle shows you the area of the bus involved in this explosion. All bus services in central London have been suspended. Transport for London has just announced in the last few moments. And these are now being regarded as terrorist incidents, of course. And we've heard also from the Home Secretary that the Cobra Civil Emergencies Committee of senior ministers has already met this morning. The police have taken operational command of the situation. Health services are in support to deal with the terrible injuries, Charles Clarke said, that there have been. And he's also said that he wants to express sympathy on behalf of the whole government. And as I was just mentioning a few moments ago, we're expecting commentary from Tony Blair by midday today. We know that the London Mayor, Ken Livingstone, let's listen to an eyewitness.
None of us knew what happened. And, it was mayhem. And then the driver came out of the carriage and which was quite scary because he shone a red light, and we all thought I thought I was dead. I had a vision of a fire, and then he came out and said he walked us through the platform. It was just, other than I don't know what happened. You probably know more than me. It was just, I don't know, but there's some seriously injured people there. It's not good. I mean, I'm so lucky. A lot, because all the windows came in and smashed and people are covered, and my window didn't break and I got a seat. I think the worst is people standing.
A woman clearly in deep shock after what she has experienced, it would seem, at Russell Square tube station this morning. It's being quoted on the newswires from Strasbourg that the EU Parliament President has said there have been a lot of deaths in London. That is being reported on the Reuters news agency. Europe is united with the UK against terrorism. He's being quoted there. Let's listen to more.
I really don't want to talk through it again. I'm sorry, but I don't have a great recollection of it. What I do have, I've told him, so maybe he'll be generous enough to tell you. I don't.
But it was just a big bang, essentially.
Yeah, what caused it, I've no idea. I mean, obviously, we've heard subsequently what it probably is, but couldn't tell that immediately from being on.
And what have you seen down
there? I was in the front carriage and people were severely injured there. But I've heard, and I don't know if it's right, that people were even worse further back.
And this is inside Russell Square station, was it, or further up?
No, it was in the tunnel between King's Cross and Russell Square.
And how would you describe the reaction of people in the train to what happened?
Very mixed. Some people were very calm, others were very panicky. That's about all I can tell you, really.
Can you describe the moment that it happened? Do you have...
Only that I heard a very loud bang, the lights went out and the carriage filled with smoke. And people were thrown forward.
And what did you hear?
Just a loud bang and the noise of people reacting in different ways. Okay.
So one man kindly giving the media some words of his experiences in the tube at Russell Square this morning. This is the latest picture that we have in from there. As that man himself was alluding to, there are many casualties, it appears, from what happened on that single incident there between Russell Square and King's Cross Station. This is just one of several incidents which have unfolded before us in the capital this morning. We know now that there have been 3 explosions on buses in London. All buses have been suspended. It has also been reported, as you can see on screen, that Stockwell Station has now been closed after a suspect package was found there. But this is, of course, some hour and a half now since all underground services were suspended across the capital.
Well, obviously, we're hearing reports now pouring in about a number of fatalities involved in this. A quote from the European Union at the moment that these blasts have been confirmed as a terrorist act from an EU official, Signor Frattini. Tragic confirmation that terrorism has once again hit Europe. Obviously, we don't have any independent confirmation that this is a terrorist act, but certainly all the indicators point to that. In the studio with us is a terrorism expert, Chris Bellamy. Chris, I don't know whether it's possible to say that terrorist attacks have a signature, but is there something recognisable about this kind of incident?
Well, given that we've got explosions on buses which are moving independently of any other kind of network, we've got explosions on tube trains, loud explosions. I think if it's not terrorism, then it's something extraordinarily peculiar. It is obviously deliberately planted explosive devices, and obviously it's highly coordinated in terms of the planning, with attacks almost simultaneously on tube trains and on buses straddling the centre of the great city of London.
I remember a quote from the head of the Met, I think it was, a while ago, saying it wasn't a question of if London is the target of a terrorist attack, but when. I
think it was David Vanness, who's the head of counter-terrorism for Scotland Yard. Very interesting, the report that we've just heard. First of all, that COBRA, the Cabinet Office Briefing Room Committee, has already sat, that control for the moment rests with the police, which is what you'd expect, because of course there are a vast number of agencies who are involved in this. There's all 3 blue light services, there's the security and intelligence services, but for the moment, as you would expect, it's the police who are the lead agency. So I think it's very early to say, and we don't know how many terrible casualties there have been. The thought of being trapped on a tube train underground with fires burning underground is your worst nightmare. We don't know, but it seems to me that the emergency procedures have swung into action very efficiently, so that we can draw perhaps some small comfort from that.
Chris Bellamy, thanks for your thoughts at the moment.
We would like to offer people a service now, which we have offered in the past with the tsunami. If you are trying to contact relatives to let them know that you are safe, or you would like to make an appeal to find out whether your relative or friend is safe in London, you can do so via our ticker service on the bottom of the screen. You can email us, news@sky.com. You can text us 84501. Keep your eyes on the bottom of that screen if you are looking for information. We know from the eyewitnesses to whom we've already spoken this morning that some of the mobile networks are already down because they're simply being overloaded. Let's speak now live to our Foreign Affairs editor, Tim Marshall, who's in Covent Garden. Tim, what do you have for us from there?
Well, I've just seen the army on the street, which I think is a first in a situation like this. At Charing Cross Road, the lower part of it is taped off, and I saw about 10 army personnel liaising with the police on that. Several buses pulled up, all empty. Now, again, this is probably just one of the many false alerts that we're going to be getting today, but they're taking no chances, and the army is on the street. You mentioned the mobile phone network. I've been walking for about 2 hours, right from Hammersmith across to Covent Garden. Calm chaos is how I would describe it. All the tube stations locked up, people reading the notices, hundreds of thousands of people walking, because some don't want to get on the buses, but the buses are absolutely packed and you can't even get on them if you want to. Queues of a couple of hundred people at some of the bus stops. A lot of foreign tourists in complete bewilderment, of course, who don't know what's going on, and everyone with their mobile is on it, which is why it's taken me an hour to get through to you. The Israeli embassy is also taped off. and the whole of Embassy Row. Again, that'll be as a security precaution. And I've just managed to find a taxi after a couple of hours, and the taxi driver who came around Buckingham Palace said that there are armed policemen with machine guns on the outsides of Buckingham Palace. But I think the main thing to report is that it is pretty chaotic in central London, but it's also pretty calm, but also the fact that the army is on the streets.
Stay with us, Tim. We're just getting reports. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Ian Blair, has said there have been at least 6 explosions, according to him, but that the picture is still very confused. Tim, from your contacts and your expertise in this area, of course, it is obvious that the authorities in London must have always feared this sort of attack after 9/11. Has there been any recent commentary on it at all?
No, Bikini State has been black. Bikini States are various colour codings within government buildings which show you what the state of alert is, and it's black, which is a state of readiness. So I don't think there's been any of this what's called chatter. There has, ever since 9/11, and even more so since Madrid, all the security people I know have always said it is a matter of when. There has been no doubt in their mind that this would happen. I think you can probably rule out the real IRA or Irish terrorism on this because of the way it's happened and the manner of it and the probable death toll. And that points us to the International Terror Network. And, of course, the timing is the London winning the Olympics added to, of course, G8.
Do you know, Tim, under what circumstances the army are operating there? I mean, clearly this is part of the whole emergency operation which gets pulled into place on an event like this. But what are they actually doing there, and what do you know of this part of the operation?
I had to keep going through because I was heading to somewhere else, and I'm trying to get back to you now. But I think they're just liaising with the police. And can you imagine just how much the police are stretched right now? I mean, every 2 or 3 minutes, you'll see police cars flying past you, trying to get through the traffic. Ambulances and the fire services all flying past with the sirens going and the lights going. I wouldn't say overwhelmed because I don't know what their situation is, but they're obviously massively stretched. Hence, when you get a number of bomb alerts, which they're getting, they will not be able to cope. And so I suspect they've brought in the army bomb detection squads. And that's what it looked to me like was happening in Charing Cross Road, which was taped off. And as I said, the bus is pulled over and the bus is emptied in Charing Cross Road. OK, Tim, we'll talk to you again, no doubt. We'll speak to you again and return to images from Russell Square, Chris.
Police confirming at least 6 explosions now, that coming to us via the Associated Press, Newswire and Scotland Yard. The targets we have at the moment: Edgware Road, King's Cross, Liverpool Street, Russell Square, Aldgate East and Moorgate, all those underground stations. Also reports of a number of explosions on buses as well. We've seen one bus with its roof ripped off in Russell Square. Unions involved in the bus service, drivers' unions, tell us that they believe there were at least 3 explosions on buses. I'll just highlight for you there. If you can just look at your screen where I'm circling there, that is the remains of that double-decker bus. As I say, Bob Mills, one of Sky News' producers, was at that scene and said he saw the roof of the bus literally ripped off. A number of casualties there. As far as casualties overall go, 90 at least from a doctor we're hearing, but a number of fatalities according to eyewitnesses. The Army saying civil contingency report measures are now in place. We heard the Home Secretary earlier say that the police were basically in charge of the situation, but now we understand the Army is on the streets of London trying to manage this major terrorist situation. Mike Penning we can talk to at the moment. He's an MP who also has experience, I understand, Mike, of dealing with emergency situations.
Yes, I was a fireman for many years and I served in the Army in Northern Ireland, so I have experienced some of this.
So this is the stuff of your nightmares, I suppose, as well as passengers at the moment?
Well, this is something that all the emergency services and the military train for, but it's also their worst nightmare. And our thoughts and prayers must be with the passengers and the people that have been injured and probably sadly died, it sounds today, but also with our professional specialists, because this is hugely stressful. If you can imagine these bombs going off down on the underground down there, there are almost certainly people trapped. There are firemen and ambulance crews inside there trying to stabilise the trapped people and trying to get them out, and that's a massively stressful, professional, difficult job to do.
Mercifully, Mike, incidents like this are extremely rare, what exactly happens when the phones start ringing? How do you organise who goes where?
Well, the training is there in place, and there is an emergency contingent plan that is already structured there. So when the control centres get the calls, they know roughly what the sort of thing is. Now, initially, as I understand it, and we're all playing this by ear to a degree, they thought this was a power surge, whether you'd have had a major fire incident on the underground. Now, that, because of the history of the underground and some of the major incidents and sad incidents we've had before, means that the planning is there, and they would have expected that sort of thing. But once they realised it was a bomb sort of incident, then you have a whole different scenario coming in, and I'm not surprised, and I'm actually pleased to see that the military are out on the streets of London, not because so much of their bomb disposal expertise, which we need, but they have years and years of experience of dealing with this sort of incident.
Mike, you said chillingly accurately, this is the stuff of nightmares. I don't know what the conversation has been in the corridors of Westminster over recent weeks and months, but have you been worried that we are next on the target list?
Yes, I think, I'm a new MP, but I've been in Westminster for several years now. And yes, one of the first things I noticed when I came to the Commons as an MP is the enhanced security that was there. And some of us have been speaking to the senior police there just to make sure that we know exactly what we should do while we're in the palace, so that we know exactly what's going on and what our staff should do. Because obviously there's MPs there, 650 of us, but there's a lot of staff, and they need to know as well what's going on. So we've always been concerned, and people like me that have a background in this sort of incident have taken a firm interest.
Mike Penning, thanks for your thoughts.
We're just hearing from Gleneagles that Tony Blair has no immediate plans to leave the G8 summit in the wake of the blasts which have rocked the capital this morning. An address due from him, though, at noon today. Of course, our cameras are standing by. Stay with us on Sky News for that. Stay with us here for all the information that you need. In a few moments' time, the ticker that is running at the bottom of your screen will switch to a service for those who are concerned about relatives, whether you are trying to get a message out of London or into it, or just trying to find out where your loved ones are. You can email us on news@sky.com. You can text us too on 84501. Some of those messages already starting to come in. These are live images as you join us from Russell Square. People still being ferried away from the blasts which have occurred there. On the line from there, our colleague Lisa Holland. Lisa, some very distressing scenes from Russell Square. Take us through what you know from there.
Yes, morning to you, Julie. I'm looking at the pictures that you're looking at now. I'm standing by that camera, and quite clearly you can see that this is an ongoing major incident with people still being evacuated from this bus incident in Russell Square. Just to reflect on what my colleague Tim Marshall was saying, there is this surreal atmosphere here of bewilderment, yet a sense of calm, because actually people can't get around easily. There's nowhere to go apart from to try and get home. Clearly the public transport system has utterly ground to a halt. I haven't seen any buses now for some considerable time. The ones that I have seen have been emptied of people on them and not in service sign put on. Clearly people concerned that there could be further incidents on buses. And that sense of not knowing that this, whatever it is over, echoed by talking to the police officers around here who are constantly moving the barriers back, increasing the sealed off areas because they really can't be sure that there may be further incidents, and watching as sniffer dogs go around parked cars, checking drains, and also seeing staff simply rushing from local hospitals with blood supplies, with blankets, with wheelchairs, people coming out trying to do absolutely what they can and really not having a sense of exactly what it's all about.
We're watching on the other side of the screen some images, stay with us Lisa, of the immediate aftermath. I'm assessing on the right hand. Yes, it is. It's from a traffic camera in Russell Square. And I think on the right-hand side of that screen, indeed on the left-hand as that picture becomes clearer, we can see the bus itself. I'm just going to get my colleague to mark this up on the image that you can see before us. The bus on the left-hand side of the screen. I think on the right-hand side of the screen is where you can see the roof of the bus, which has been blown off. The vehicle itself is on the left. It gives you some sense of the force of the explosion. Those people that we spoke to on the at ground there who'd witnessed this, including one of our producers, Bob Mills, said that the whole of the roof of a bus was simply ripped off, and these pictures are indeed confirmation of that. We know that there have been 2 other confirmed explosions on buses in central London. We are awaiting more detail on what has happened and where these buses are, but confirmation, if it were indeed necessary now, several hours into this major incident, that there has been a bomb explosion on a bus, it would appear, in Russell Square. Joining us from our central London studio is Brian Cook. He's the leader of the London Transport Users Committee. Thanks for staying with us as we witness these terrible events unfold. Brian, your impression of them?
It's a terrible day for London after what was such a good day yesterday. And our hearts must first of all go out to those people who have been injured, and it seems to be clearly to the relatives and friends of those people who have been killed.
The whole of the network, we know, buses, tubes, everything now in a state of paralysis. You, of all people, know just the sheer weight of numbers involved in the network on its ordinary day-to-day functioning on midweek in London.
Yes, I do, but I hope I can bring you up to date and give you some advice on that. As we understand it, and things are changing all the time, the tube network is totally suspended throughout the whole of the capital. The bus network is suspended in central London. But both British Transport Police and the National Rail companies are doing their best to keep National Rail services running and the National Rail services open. Freight train services, we understand, have been suspended throughout London and the South East to make way for extra capacity for mainline trains. And the current advice coming out from the British Transport Police is for people to make their way to a National Rail station and to leave London.
Indeed, we do know also, Brian, that a couple of the mainline transport services into London are being held up in areas outside London too. Just in terms of your own involvement with the Transport Police and the authorities in London in preparation for some horrendous incident like this, I mean, to what degree in the past have you been involved in discussions about major incident reaction?
Involved on the periphery, but we have been involved in some of the exercises that have taken place, and we are very confident that all the police services in London, that's the British Transport Police, the Metropolitan Police and the City Force, had robust contingency plans, because as others have said, they were fearing just a day like this, and it appears to have come.
Brian Cook, thank you very much indeed.
Let's talk to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Ian Blair. Sir Ian, thanks for joining us on what must be a terribly busy day for your officers. As things stand at the moment, what can you tell us?
Well, I think the first and most important thing I can say is that the situation, although confused, is slowly clearing. We are aware that there have been 6 incidents, including one on a bus. There are many casualties, but there are a series of messages that I need to give. The first is that a well-rehearsed emergency plan is swinging into operation.
Sir Ian, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you. What you're saying is very important. Unfortunately, the microphone has just moved slightly away from you. Do you mind just moving a little bit closer? Because people obviously want to hear what you say and what your advice is. So, sorry, just start again, sir.
OK, if I can. There have been 6 sites of explosions. Are you now hearing me?
I am, thank you, sir. OK,
there are 6 sites of explosions, including one on a bus. The situation has been very confused, but is now coming under control. A very well-rehearsed and sophisticated emergency plan for London is swinging into action with all of the city forces and the ambulance service are working in coordination. And I have got a series of messages. The first is that we want people to stay where they are. I've just heard coming over Sky some message that we want people to move towards the main railway termini. We don't want that at the moment. People are safer where they are, whether they're at home or in business. Transport across London is going to be very difficult, so it's a question of staying where you are. Secondly, we don't want people to call the emergency services unless it's a life-threatening matter. The emergency service are dealing very well with this incident, but we don't want to be distracted. And thirdly, we will shortly be issuing a telephone number from Scotland Yard about the Casualty Bureau arrangements.
Sir Ian, every piece of evidence at the moment suggests this was a coordinated terrorist attack. Was there any kind of warning?
We have been at a very high state of alert. Of course, if there had been any kind of specific warning, we would have dealt with it. We're not aware of any warning at the moment. We are concerned that this is a coordinated attack. We are aware that at least one of the sites certainly does contain indications of explosives. The most important message, though, however, is just that while it is a confused situation, it must be a confused situation with multiple sites like this. A coordinated effort is slowly bringing order out of the chaos. Metropolitan Police Service, by agreement with all other emergency services, is coordinating this effort, and within a matter of hours, peace will be brought to the streets of London, and we will know exactly what we're dealing with.
Sir Ian, your colleague confirming at least 2 fatalities at Aldgate at the moment, police sources. You say at least one site there is evidence of some kind of explosive material. Are we talking about a bomb, a suicide bomber?
At the moment it's just too early to speculate, and I think one of the messages that I would really like to get out is that speculation in the media about what's happening is not necessarily going to help public confidence either. I understand that's your job, but until we know exactly what we're dealing with, you will not get very much further messages out of us, except to stay calm, stay where you are, to trust the fact that a long planned, coordinated plan is in place and working. The hospitals, the ambulance service, the police services are working, and London will return to normal as soon as possible.
Sir Ian, I remember one of your colleagues, I think it was the head of the anti-terrorism unit, talking about the fact that an attack on London was not a question of if, but when. Is this what you were waiting for?
Well, it may be. It probably is, and we are very concerned about it, but I really do think we need to understand exactly what we've got before we issue too many statements.
I do appreciate that we're dealing with very sensitive matters involving national security, but can you tell us if there was any kind of warning? I don't mean specifically today, but some kind of intelligence network chatter that you'd heard that we might be a target at this moment.
Right. There's nothing to do with this particular moment, but we've always said that London has been and is a terrorist target, and if this is a terrorist attack, it is the very attack for which we have been warning. But I really can't take you any further, other than to reassure the public that the situation is coming under control.
Let me just read this from the Associated Press newswire. Senior Israeli official says Scotland Yard told Israel minutes before explosions that it had received warnings of possible terror attacks.
I can't comment on that. I've never heard that, but all sorts of things will, I've no doubt, come out of the wash in speculation in the next few hours. But that is certainly not something of which I am aware. And if I may, I'm going to have to do a series of these broadcasts, so I'm probably going to have to come to a close now.
All right, Sir Ian Blair, Met Police Commissioner, thanks for your time. I do appreciate you're very busy today for all the wrong reasons.
So the words there, no doubt we'll hear from him again later this day, Sir Ian Blair. He issued a fairly clear warning to people and advice to people in the capital. Stay where you are, don't try to move around the capital, and please do not call the emergency services. Everybody has been scrambled, it would appear, as part of this operation which has now come into force. We know that the army is on the streets of London too. We were speaking to our colleague in Covent Garden who'd seen the army on the streets there. Let's speak now to one of our guests who's joined us in the studio. John O'Connor, former Flying Squad, has got here to comment and offer some insight as to what we're seeing unfolding here. John, I mean, it clearly, as Ian Blair was pointing out, as we watch these live pictures from Russell Square of the emergency services swinging into action, this is the thing everybody was dreading for the capital.
Absolutely right. You know, it was the Assistant Commissioner, David Vaness, who said a terrorist attack is when, the if is academic. I think the when has happened. That's what it looks like to me. And they've attacked the most vulnerable soft underbelly of London with the transport system. And in particular buses. I mean, people hop on and off of buses. It's just appalling.
It is one of those facts of life that if we have a transport system used by hundreds of thousands, millions in the capital, that this is the prime area, the easiest area.
Absolutely, because I mean people travel on the underground, they take packages with them, they take parcels, luggage and so forth. It's just not physically, logistically possible to check everybody using the public transport network. It just can't be done. So this is always going to be a vulnerable target. I don't really see how the authorities can make it any more secure.
Of what you've witnessed so far in terms of the emergency services and their coordination this morning?
Oh, I think that they've instigated their contingency plans. They're well rehearsed. We know from a year ago they had the operations at Bank Station. The coordination is very, very well done, and I think the Commissioner is absolutely right that a well rehearsed plan is now swinging into operation. And clearly what they need to do is to ensure that the people that are left in London at the moment don't get into any form of a panic, and hopefully that any injured persons can be properly dealt with.
We're just seeing on the wires from the new French Prime Minister Nicolas Sarkozy, the top French ministers agree to precise steps in Paris after what has happened. Let's cross live now to Lisa Holland in Russell Square.
Russell Square, one of the targets of today's apparent terrorist attack across the centre of London. Lisa, just talk us through what you can see where you are at the moment.
Well, it's still, as you can see, an ongoing situation in that we are pretty much fairly constantly seeing the fresh arrival of police officers and members of the emergency services. And I've seen countless local hospital staff. Great Ormond Street is very close to here indeed, just running through the streets with blankets, trolleys, wheelchairs. One would assume after this period of time that most of the casualties from the bus have been taken away. However, the evidence seems to suggest that obviously there perhaps may be people who still need some kind of assistance given that flow of medical supplies. I think the key thing to point out at the moment is whilst there have been no fresh reports of any other incidents in the recent past, clearly the police here are extremely concerned of secondary devices, which is why they are pretty much consistently moving the cordon back. Since I've been here, I've been to a couple of points around this cordon, around the area, and the cordon has come back in both of those areas. They are trying to establish that within this area, vehicles are secure. One gentleman just came along, made himself known, told police that it was his car. They were a little bit concerned about that.
Lisa, we're just going to hear from another eyewitness who survived one of today's attacks.
We were on the tubes this morning, and there was like major problems on the tubes and stuff. I got off at King's Cross because that's where they told us to evacuate from, and just walking down through to central London. Didn't even notice the bus. I just went across the road, and then just blown off my feet and stuff, and looked around, and there was obviously lots of people injured and stuff. So. Yeah.
So you were blown off your feet?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a bomb. So I presume it's a bomb. It has to be. It's like the bus was
what part of the bomb? What part of the
back of the bus?
So just tell me again about which bit of the bus exploded.
Well, I mean, what I could see was that the back of it was just like completely destroyed. So I don't really know where. There were people climbing down from the top of the bus, but I think people that were walking past were probably more injured because of the blast and stuff. So. But there's a lot of people a lot worse than me.